Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet. So yesterday we stopped here. The value of money. Just go back a little bit. विषया विनिवर्तन्ते निराहारस्य देहिनः रसवर्जं रसोऽप्यस्य परं दृष्ट्वा निवर्तते. So, niraharasya, for the one who does not feed the sense organs. Dehinaha, for the one who indwells this body. Vishayaha, senses. Vinivartante, come back to oneself. Rasavarjam, leaving the longing behind. Brahman, Param Brahman, Drishtva, having seen. Asya, of this person. Rasaha, longing. Api, even. Nivartate, goes away. So, niraharasya dehinaha vishayaha vinivartante rasavarjam param drishtva asya rasaha api nivartate. So for one who does not feed the senses come back to oneself, leaving the longing behind. Having seen Brahman, that is when the self is known, even the longing goes away. There is the possibility of a doubt here. Does this capacity to withdraw one's senses from the sense objects at will give the person jnana nishta? No. Even a complete fool can practice this technique. So this practice of pratyahara can be practiced even by a fool. A yogi also actively engages in this discipline of withdrawing the senses. The sense organs can be withdrawn as a turtle withdraws its limbs. Therefore, you cannot say a person is a jnana nishtha merely because he or she can withdraw the senses and sit with himself or herself. Shankara presents this doubt in order to deal with it. Even though people may not go along with their fancies, the taste for them will still be there. So just by withdrawing your sense organs, keeping your senses under control, you will not gain jnana nishta. Why? Because The taste for them will still be there. Therefore, is this not the practice of suppression rather than a withdrawal? We have seen how people blow up. The senses definitely get them sooner or later. If not today, then tomorrow. Why? Because everything is suppressed inside. So rather than suppression, what is required is sublimation without any trace, just like how the camphor burns without any trace, no ashes also there. So when the value for something is inside a man, he will definitely deliver himself into the hands of his senses eventually. Because he is not their master, the senses will get him. If he thinks he has enslaved them, he need only wait for certain situations to present themselves. He will find himself enslaved by his senses in no time. They will take him for a ride. In the wink of an eye, he will be gone totally. Which is why Gurudev says, it's all very nice. It doesn't take a lot of effort to be happy when everything is going well. But to keep that centeredness and happiness in despite of adverse situations. When someone is blaming you, someone is humiliating you, are you still able to keep that centeredness when things go wrong? So that is why it is said, when the value for something is inside a man, he will definitely deliver himself into the hands of his senses. So what is the sense here? When someone is humiliating you, it is a sense of hearing. So that hearing automatically triggers that self-image gets uh, upset, and then you blow up. The taste lingers on. Thus, even an ordinary person can withdraw the senses, but the taste, rasa, and value for the fancies will still be there. Such a person feels that certain sense enjoyments are important, and without them, he or she cannot be happy. Suppose, because this person is told that sense enjoyments are all very painful, he or she decides not to go after them. Then he or she might begin practicing withdrawal of the senses, but find that the rasa does not go away. Even those who already have a value for meditation and learn to withdraw the senses in order to discover ananda in themselves or gain inner contentment may continue to have a value for the enjoyments of the senses. The question is, when would the taste, the subjective value for sense enjoyments go? The subjective value is an emotional value. Suppose a person is not a fool and has viveka. He is intellectually convinced that sense enjoyments are of no use because they do not provide any real security or lasting pleasure. Even if this person has no intellectual value for sense enjoyments, he or she may still have an emotional value. Therefore, when and how will this emotional value go? One is of the head and the other is of the heart. Intellectual value is from the head and the emotional values of the heart. So this person has his heart scattered away in different things, in different fancies. The emotional value is very important and must be recognized as such. Emotion is part of your life, a part of your expression. Therefore, you cannot dismiss it, nor is it necessary to do so. And emotion does need to be respected because it has a power that can be overpowering. We can be completely overwhelmed by emotion, and therefore we need to know how to tackle it. Just like in Ashtavakra, Gurudev talks of storms of emotions. They come without any warning and then just take you over, overpowering. So, therefore, emotions are part of life. You cannot dismiss them. We just need to know how to tackle them. An emotional value, which is a subjective value, is different from an intellectual value, which is objective. Intellectually, your analysis can be clean. These are all sense objects. They do not contain any joy or security. I am insecure and remain so, whether I have sense objects or not, whether I have money or not. Therefore, I need to discover security within myself. All of this you may know, but although you know that money does not make you secure, you still have an emotional value for it. And even if you do not have an emotional value for money, an intellectual value will definitely be there because you do need to buy a few things. Therefore, to say that money has no value is not correct. The value of money. That money does not give you security is a fact. But money does give you a house, health, haircuts, and a variety of other necessities and comforts. Money is not something that has no value whatsoever. Because it has an objective value, it cannot be dismissed totally. With reference to its emotional value, money is used to measure success. Follow the train of thought here. So, if someone comes to you to see you in a new car and your car is battered, you find yourself wanting to have a new car. When money is used to measure your success, there is always a feeling that you have not made it. I did not do this and I did not do that is one of the many inner tapes indicative of a subjective emotional value that cannot be dismissed. How can you withdraw from that rasa, that taste that is always there? To suppress the value is not the answer because suppression is nothing but a volcano that blows its top one day. Whenever there is suppression, this problem arises. Here, Krishna told Arjuna how the subjective value is dealt with. The word Vishayas usually means sense objects, but in the present context, it stands for the senses, the topic discussed in the previous and following verses. Based on similar expressions found in the Shastra, Shankara, in his commentary on this verse, converts sense objects into sense organs. Here, the sense organs belong to a person who does not take to any sense object, who denies himself or herself sense objects, who does not have any sense pursuits. Nirahara. Ahara means sense objects and refers to that which is taken by you. Food is called ahara because it is eaten, taken by you. The one who does not feed the sense organs is therefore called a nirahara. Krishna also referred to this person as a dehi, meaning one who is alive in a physical body. Shankara makes the point here that the person who engages in a rigorous discipline of sense withdrawal can be either a viveki or an aviveki. He or she can even be deluded, a fool, murkaha api. In all cases, the sense organs that are withdrawn from the sense objects come back to oneself. Vishayaha vinivartante. But even though the sense organs come back and sense objects are no longer with the person, the taste for the sense objects remains. Rasavarjam vinivartante. In other words, the subjective emotional value for them is still there. If the person is deluded, an intellectual value will also be there. Impelling the person to perform rigorous disciplines, tapas, merely because someone said that they should be done. The difference between a Viveki and an Aviveki then is that the Viveki will only have the subjective value, not the intellectual value, whereas the Aviveki will have both the subjective and the intellectual value. So the one who is deluded, the Aviveki, will have both the subjective and the objective value, whereas a Viveki will neither have, will only have the subjective, not the intellectual value. But the Viveki is not a Jnana Nishta, is not a Jnani. He's still on the path, like a yogi, right? So knowledge alone removes rasa. In general terms, rasa is a sense and is commonly used to mean raga or liking. Shankara describes it in this way, in the same way. Anything that is pleasing to you may be referred to as raga or rasa. This is the value that remains inside a person's heart and mind, even after having withdrawn the sense organs from it. So, what is the rasa? The value that remains inside a person's heart and mind, even after having withdrawn the sense organs from it. This rasa too goes away, Krishna said, when the self is known. Rasopi param drishtva nivartate. This means that when a Viveki who pursues self knowledge and is judicious about his or her present pursuits withdraws the senses, there is no suppression. The Viveki is only living a life of meaningful discipline, whereas for a person who practices self withdrawal without pursuing this knowledge, the withdrawal does amount to suppression. I will read this paragraph again. So, knowledge alone removes rasa. In general terms, rasa is a sense and is commonly used to mean raga or liking. Shankara describes it in the same way. Anything that is pleasing to you may be referred to as raga or rasa. This is the value that remains inside a person's heart and mind, even after having withdrawn the sense organs from it. This rasa too goes away, Krishna said, when the self is known. Rasopi param drishtva nivartate. This means that when a Viveki who pursues self knowledge and is judicious about his or her present pursuits withdraws the senses, there is no suppression. The Viveki is only living a life of meaningful discipline. No, it's fine, Dr. Mara. I will read.
Is it
No,
okay?
no problem.
I got a little late today.
No issue.
Yes, sir.
This means that when a Viveki who pursues self knowledge and is judicious about his or her present pursuits withdraws the senses, there is no suppression. Because even the emotional value, the subjective value, is also not there. The Viveki is only living a life of meaningful discipline. That word meaningful discipline is very beautiful. It's not just discipline, it's not just rigorous discipline, but it's meaningful. Whereas for a person who practices sense withdrawal without pursuing this knowledge, the withdrawal does amount to suppression. Meaningful discipline implies discipline, withdrawing the senses from the sense objects, plus pursuing self knowledge. Otherwise, it just amounts to suppressing. The literal meaning of the word drishtva is having seen, but here it is used purely in the sense of knowing. What is to be known is I am that. Tat param brahma aham eva. It is not any other jnana. That Brahman is myself. There is no difference between the two. Knowing that I am Brahman does not imply a knower known difference. And in the wake of this knowledge, the rasa goes away, nivartate, meaning that it does not take the person for a ride. How the emotional value for sense objects can capture one's mind is explained by Krishna in the next verse. Once you can no longer be taken for a ride by the rasa, the knowledge of sense objects does not create any kind of craving or longing in you. It is seedless, nirbija, and therefore does not sprout, meaning that it does not set you up so that you are carried away by your fancies. However, when the clarity of vision is not there, meaning when knowledge is not there, elimination of the rasa is not possible. Therefore, knowledge in the form of clear vision, samyak darshana, has to be well established, steady, and firm. May you work on gaining this vision again and again, is what is meant here, because if you give up working for this vision, the erroneous vision you have will not go away. People generally plan to work for clear vision only after they have fixed up everything in their lives. But it does not work that way. There is no fixing up of everything without the vision. So, the pursuit is twofold: yoga, self mastery, and jnana, self knowledge. So, karma yoga implies pursuing knowledge as well. So, it is not just mastering yourself, but it is also pursuing self knowledge. So, this is often said, I will, once I retire, once I finish all my responsibilities, I will get into this. So, similarly, pursuit of pursuit of moksha is twofold: yoga as well as jnana. So, unless you are a master of yourself, you cannot get jnana nishta. And unless you have jnana nishta, you cannot completely get out of rasa. So there is a life of meaningful discipline that one has to follow, taking care of both the subjective and the intellectual values. Removing the sense objects also does not work. Taking the word Vishaya to mean sense organs, as we have just done, is a simple way of looking at this verse. Now we will look at it by taking Vishaya to mean the sense objects. Suppose the sense objects have gone away because you withdraw yourself from the sense world. Previously, you lived in Manhattan, and now you are living in the mountains a day and a half away from anyone. You are completely alone. No objects will come to you, no newspapers, radio, or people. You have not even allowed yourself a television set. Having denied yourself all these sense pursuits, you are a nirahara. However, although the sense objects have gone away, the taste for them will still be there. You will find yourself wondering about what everyone else is doing. Then you will begin to think that you should go back to the city for some time. After all, you will say, even Freud does not condone suppression. And then there are those who will send you letters now and then, pointing out that what you're doing is wrong. This is the prime of your life. Everyone is making money in the stock market, and you are losing all kinds of opportunities to do the same. Something you will certainly come to regret for the rest of your life, all of which will remind you that you are a nobody. Their comments will begin to make a lot of sense to you because you have rasa inside. A value for money is there, in fact. The only reason you're able to stay where you are is because you have money. Alcohol is another example of something for which the rasa remains. You may have given it up and all the bottles may have walked away, but the rasa will still be there. It will only go when you have something more intoxicating, something with more of a kick in it, something more profound, more beautiful, and more useful. In other words, more powerful. This is why alcoholics require prayer. Without prayer, they cannot easily get rid of the problem. An alcoholic who turns into a sober person can be a saint because he or she has mastered prayer and knows what it is all about. When an alcoholic finds something more powerful than alcohol, the rasa for alcohol within the person goes away. Sorry, just give me a minute. I'll be back. We can reflect on what we have read just now and understood. If anyone wants to share anything, please go ahead. I'll come back. Yeah, we'll read further. So, very beautifully explained by Swamiji as to what the emotional value is, how that rasa is. Because removing just by removing sense objects does not work. Example is of that person who goes to the mountains from Manhattan. All the sense objects are removed from him, but then that rasa is still there. The taste for the sense objects will still be there. And that is the emotional value. And unless that rasa is also eliminated, there is no jnana nishta. You may have only mastered yourself. You've denied yourself sense objects, but you still have them because any situation that comes up that triggers them will will enslave you. So it only amounts to suppression, right? So if you're just denying yourself sense objects, it is only suppression. Therefore, what is required is living a life of meaningful discipline, a discipline that includes emotional value as well, eliminating the emotional value. The importance of acknowledging the emotional value. The need to acknowledge one's emotional values is seen in the alcoholic who thinks that he or she can stop drinking at any time and who may even advance the advantages of alcohol in terms of one's health. Of course, when you begin to take alcohol, you are still the master. You can take it or you need not take it. Sometimes you take it and other times you dismiss it. No problem. But alcohol is not an ordinary substance. It is something that takes charge of you in time so that eventually you have no power over it. It is more powerful than a Rakshasa, a demon. From here on, although you may argue that you can stop at any time, in fact, you cannot. You are no longer talking. The alcohol is talking. First, the person takes the bottle, and then after some time, the bottle calls the person. If it is 6 o'clock, the time set aside for happy hour, and the person is elsewhere, the bottle calls, "Where are you?" He replies, "I'm here in the office working." Then the bottle says, "This is not the time to be in the office. Come here." Faithfully, the person goes. "Come and sit down," the bottle says, and the person sits down. "Pick me up," it says. Once the bottle is in his or her hand, it says, "Come on, tilt." Then the person tilts every day. There was a time when he or she took the bottle. Now the bottle takes the person. All decisions about where to go and what to do are made by the bottle, not by the person. Where then is there any question of taking alcohol being your decision? This is no longer the case. You lost this freedom a long time ago. The only way to stop drinking is to accept that you have no power over alcohol. You have to know that. The acknowledgement alone is the beginning. There is no other way. Once you acknowledge that alcohol has a power over you, there is a chance of you regaining this freedom, provided, of course, that you really decide to stop drinking. You need to acknowledge that you are not going to drink anymore. And once you stop taking alcohol, the bottles you have in your cupboard will go away. You will not want to keep them and will therefore distribute them to those who want them. But the smell of alcohol, the craving for it, will still be there in your head, which is where support groups come in. Otherwise, you may start drinking again and lose yourself totally, after which there is no chance. Often, when people find themselves secure, when they know that they are everything, do the rasas lose? Only when people find themselves secure, when they know that they are everything, do the rasas lose their hold. Then the world can no longer take such people for a ride. To understand what Krishna was saying here, we need not alter the meaning of the word Vishaya to mean sense organs. It can be looked at from the perspective of sense objects also. This alcohol you can replace by so many things. We all may not be drinking alcohol, right? But then you can replace that alcohol, that fill in the blanks, remove alcohol, and put up social media, put up Netflix, Prime Video, and what else? I think we can all add to this and see what are the things that take charge of our life, just like how the bottle is calling this person. All the habituations, all the addictions, even the way of thinking. You want to be in the good books of everyone. So because you don't want to hear anything unpleasant about yourself. Protecting that self-image. All that comes under this thing of alcohol. So, param drishtva nivartate. So, what we saw in this verse, before going on to the next verse, we'll see. Such a beautiful verse this is. So, we are doing all the characteristics of a sthita prajna. So, initially, Krishna says, the one whose desires, the binding desires, are no longer holding him. Rajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyev atmanatishta. He is happy with himself by himself. And then he goes on to say, Dukkeshvanudvigna manaha sukeshu vigatasprihaha vita raga bhaya krodaha sthitadir muniruchyate. This is how does such a person, how is this person? He is not flustered by all the three causes of sorrow, which is Adhyatmik, Adi Bhautik, and Adi Daivik. Plus, he is free from fear and free from, he does not have any longing for Sukha. Sukheshu Vigata Sprihaha. And Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha. So that, and there he is free from Raga, Bhaya, and Krodha. And then comes on the aspect of the Kurmongani Vasarvashaha. How he withdraws. How does such a person get to the state of centeredness? Is like, just like how a turtle withdraws its limbs into its shell, this person has such a thick shell that nothing can affect him. Not just the subjective, not the intellectual value, not even the subjective value. So how does that happen? Param drishtva nivartate. So that rasopi, that even that rasa, the taste also, that can remain despite self-mastery, despite withdrawing your senses from the sense objects, that rasopi also will go when param drishtva.
Is it not that he has a subjective value and not the emotional value?
He does not have either of them. So emotional subjective is the same. There are two values, emotional or subjective and intellectual or objective. So he, param drishtva, the person who is that jnana nishta, has neither subjective nor the objective value. So just by wearing ochre robes and going and sitting in the mountains, you don't become a jnani. There is no jnana nishta. It is only in the wake of self-knowledge that even that taste for the sense objects goes away. Param drishtva nivartate. And that is why the pursuit is twofold. That of meaningful discipline, self-mastery, dhamma, as well as pursuit of knowledge, jnana. So therefore, in the four pillars of knowledge, you have viveka, vairagya, shamadhi, shat sampatti, and mumukshutva. In the shamadhi, shat sampatti, you have shama, dhamma, uparama, titiksha, shraddha, Samadhanam. So that Dhamma is such an important aspect. Dhamma is your taking hold of your that intellectual value, your getting rid of the emotional value, the intellectual value or the objective value. But then it only amounts to suppression unless you give up the taste as well. Even that taste is not there for this person. Ramana Maharshi and all of them, even if they had, for instance, Netflix and social media and Instagram and everything, they would not be carried away. They would not have this longing. But you and I have. We are still work in progress. So that is why once you get on to looking at an Instagram reel, you can't stop. You continue. So, and just by denying yourself, saying, okay, from today up to next 1 week, I'm not going to get onto social media. This is what we do in an advanced course. For a few days, we are off the mobile, everything. But we come back to square one because that emotional value is still there. And that is what is taken care of by self knowledge. The taste lingers on. So, when would that subjective value go? Only in the wake of knowledge. Only when you recognize that you are full and everything. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. When this becomes established, and we saw the value of money. Money, so you must keep. That is why Gurudev says, keep money where it is required, in your pocket, not in your head. So the intellectual value for money is that it gives you things. It buys you amenities, gives you a house, gives you clothes, gives you food. But the emotional value for money is that you attach success to money. And that example of where this person sees his friend in a new car, and immediately there is that desire to possess and own and have another new car, because what you're having is an old car. And there you measure your success. That emotional value is there. You attach your success to money, because money is used to measure success. When money is used to measure success, there is always a feeling that you have not made it. I did not do this and I did not do that is one of the many inner tapes indicative of a subjective emotional value that cannot be dismissed. This money can be replaced. Fill in the blanks. Money can be replaced with fame. So fame, you use fame to measure your success. So you're not famous, you think you have not made it. And that inner talk that goes on, that self talk that goes on, is that you are incomplete, you are no good. And it takes you down that negative spiral. Same thing, you measure success by how many friends you have. Oh, I'm not having so many friends, so I'm not successful. You measure your success by the amount of acceptance others have of you, how pleasing you are to others. So there are so many things you can add on there. Instead of money, you can put in all these that have a say on you, that hold you. Let's do some manana on this before we go on to the next verse. And what is ahara? Ahara is ahriyate iti aharaha. Ahara is that which is taken in. Therefore, it can mean food or any sense object in general. So, all those that feed the five sense organs, all that becomes ahara. From the eyes, from the ears, from the smell, touch, taste. It's not just ahara, is not just that which we eat from the mouth. That's the general understanding. But ahara is any food that gets in through all the five senses. So, knowledge alone removes rasa. So, here Viveki is the one who will only have the subjective value, not the intellectual value. Whereas an aviveki, a person who is deluded, will have both subjective and intellectual value. And knowledge alone removes the rasa.
Can you read that sentence again, please?
Which one?
Viveki or Viveki. The
So the
difference between
difference.
Viveki.
Yeah, so I'll see that before that. Shankara makes the point here that the person who engages in a rigorous discipline of sense withdrawal can be either a viveki or an aviveki. He or she can even be deluded, a fool, murkaha api. So even a murka, a deluded person, can also practice sense withdrawal. In all cases, the sense organs that are withdrawn from the sense objects come back to oneself. Vishayaha vinivartante. But even though the sense organs come back and sense objects are no longer with the person, the taste for the sense objects remains. Rasavarjam vinivartante. In other words, the subjective emotional value for them is still there. If the person is deluded, an intellectual value will also be there. Impelling the person to perform rigorous disciplines, tapas, merely because someone said that they should be done. The difference between a viveki and an aviveki then is that the viveki will only have the subjective value, not the intellectual value, whereas the aviveki will have both the subjective and the subjective and the intellectual value. So I'll just read this part. So even though the sense organs come back and sense objects are no longer with the person, the taste for the sense objects remains. Rasavarjam vinivartante. In other words, the subjective emotional value for them is still there. If the person is deluded, an intellectual value will also be there. Impelling the person to perform rigorous disciplines, tapas, merely because someone said that they should be done. The difference between a Viveki and an Aviveki then is that the Viveki will only have subjective value, not the intellectual value, whereas the Aviveki will have both subjective and intellectual values. So, how I understood the sentence, an intellectual value will also be there for an deluded person, impelling the person to perform rigorous disciplines, tapas, merely because someone said that they should be done.
But for Viveki, intellectual value is not there.
No, no intellectual value, no subjective value.
No,
So,
no,
for instance,
the
someone
same
tells you,
sentence. Hmm.
Someone tells you you should fast on this particular day. I'm not denying the importance of fasting. I'm just saying, someone says
Mm.
you do this ritual and this will
Mm.
happen, or you withdraw, you um, what do you say?
That is tapas actually.
That is tapas. No, so they are just
Following it
suppressing.
because someone has said it.
Someone
Hmm.
is said. So what is it? You have an intellectual.
Hmm.
You're
It,
suppressing it.
hmm.
The intellectual value is more or less like objective value, right? That
Like for
Like
instance,
sentences.
money can buy you food. Money can buy you
Hmm.
amenities. That is intellectual value.
Hmm.
Subjective or emotional value is that you measure money with success. So it's to do with your heart. One is to do with your head, that you know this is what it does. And the other is to link it with your success, link it with fame, link it with your security. So that becomes an emotional value. This is actually a
but
little
I thought
confusing.
with the subjective value means you're giving more importance to self.
No, no,
Vivek,
no,
like
no, no.
Vivek is subjective value, it said, right? Meaning, like, you know the discrimination, like, well, real and unreal. Is that not what we meant?
True, but here, see, bottom line is Jnana Nishta is one who has no subjective value, no objective value. That is bottom line. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is Jnana Nishta. That means even that rasa, the taste, which is
Yeah,
the
that's
subjective
even
value,
gone.
even that
Mm-hmm.
is.
Right.
Now, for a aviveki, who person who is deluded, he has both the intellectual value as well as the subjective value. So he is far away from self knowledge. He's not even on the path. So he's going round and round in the samsara.
Right.
Because for him, money is everything. Money gets you things. Money has is a measure for success.
Mm.
Whereas a person who is on the path, a viveki, for instance, a yogi, someone who is on the path, he understands he does not have the intellectual value. He knows that this is all temporary, this is all unreal, this is all an illusion. But he still has the emotional value. Because why? He is not established in self knowledge. Emotion here, the terms are emotional, subjective values are is one. They both mean the same. Objective intellectual values are on one side. So the Viveki still has some lingering subjective value that will go only in the wake of knowledge. Param drishtva nivartate. Then he becomes established in jnana. Jnana nishta happens. Till then, it is only suppressing your senses. To sublimate the senses, to sublimate the sense objects, you require jnana. Knowledge alone removes rasa. I hope it is clear.
Yeah. Thank you.
Removing the sense objects also does not work. And this is the example of that person who goes to the mountains from Manhattan. He may go, but he still has the rasa, right? Same thing. You may pursue this, but then when people tell you, hey, listen, you're wasting your time, what is this? In the prime of your life, you're doing all this. Since that rasa is there, all of that, what they say, will bring you back into the world. A value for money is there. In fact, the only reason you're able to stay where you are. Okay, that is. And alcohol is another example. And how the rasa, initially the person has the bottle, but later, as days go by, who has the person? The bottle has the person. And Swamiji very beautifully described that. How when the time it strikes. And the same thing goes with the TV serials we watch, right? Initially, you may just be surfing here and there, and you happen to pick on something that is interesting. So you have um, that emotional value is not there yet. But then, when you start watching what is happening, there is that value, that emotional value is getting laid out. That fancy becomes something that you cannot stay without. So, again, the next day, when you have some leisure, what happens? That serial comes up. It's the serial that has you. Initially, you may have had the serial, but then the serial will have you. Will say, "Hey, listen, time to watch. It's time now. Put the TV on." Just like how the alcohol, the bottle pulls that person. Similarly, the serial, the TV will get you. The importance of acknowledging the emotional value. So, how do we get out of this? First and foremost is to acknowledge that yes, there is this emotional value that is holding me up, which is why Gurudev says acknowledging anything is half the battle won. So, once you acknowledge, only when people find themselves secure, when they know that they are everything, do the rasas lose their hold. So, here you need to acknowledge that you are not going to drink anymore. And once you stop taking alcohol, the bottles you have in your cupboard will go away. See, once you acknowledge that alcohol has a power over you, there is a chance of you regaining this freedom. Provided, of course, that you really decide to stop drinking. You need to acknowledge that you are not going to drink anymore. And once you stop taking alcohol, the bottles you have in your cupboard will go away. You will not want to keep them and will therefore distribute them to those who want them. But the smell of alcohol, the craving for it will still be there in your head, which is where support groups come in. Otherwise, you may start drinking again and lose yourself totally, after which there is no chance. So, here you can replace the support groups here by Shastra, by pursuing self knowledge. So, unless you pursue self knowledge, just by having Dhamma, you're not going to make it, which is what Swamiji said in a couple of paras before. You may practice Dhamma, but without self knowledge, you will not go anywhere near moksha. To understand what Krishna was saying here, we need not alter the meaning of the word Vishaya to mean sense organs. It can be looked at from the perspective of sense objects also. So it's time up now. We'll take up the next verse tomorrow. Tomorrow, Dr. Mara, are you able to read?
Yes, I'll read it tomorrow, Dr.
Okay.
Tamara.
Okay.
Thanks.
So it's verse 60. If
60,
you
okay.
want, you can go back, revise the verse 59, and then come to 60.
Okay.
So it
Yeah.
is Tato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipashchitaha indriyani
Mm.
pramadhini haranti prasabham manaha,
Okay.
which is
Got it.
Because the powerful senses of even the person who makes effort, who sees clearly, forcefully take the mind away, O Arjuna. So that will be interesting to read. ॐ लोका समस्ता सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ तत्सत् श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः सर्वं श्रीकृष्णार्पणमस्तु
Meditation is accepting this moment, living every moment totally with depth. Let us keep our spine erect and body relaxed and eyes closed. Relax your shoulders. Keep a big smile on your face. You're sitting like the statue of Buddha, very serene and with a serene smile on your face. Relax your body. Let's take a deep breath in and breathe out. Become aware of your chest region, throat and chest region. If you notice some tension in the body, just let it be. Except those parts of the body where you feel a tension, the other parts are in comfort. Other parts are at peace. Become aware of that also. There are many good things about you and inside of you. Acknowledge them. They will never leave you. And the negative aspect you may see in you is never going to stay with you forever. They are all guests for some time. Let them be. Sit with the total acceptance of yourself the way you are at this very moment. Total acceptance of what is now here will lead us to deeper meditation. Let go of all the effort. Shanti. Let go of all your effort and be in this emptiness. And slowly and gradually become aware of body and surroundings. And you may gently open your eyes.